everybody. Thanks for joining us, those of you who are logging on and joining us now. We are starting our Q&A series again. Due to popular demand, we are back, and we've got a bunch of new guests lined up, and it's super exciting. We're going to have lots of people talking from lots of different areas, all to do with conservation. We have scientists joining us, like Megan tonight. We have Mccubbin. She's a zoologist, a wildlife presenter. For those in the UK, you might have seen her on Springwatch recently. She's been presenting on there. So we're going to be chatting about all conservation. And then, we'll be continuing at least until things return a little bit more to normal and we can get our field work started again. So
we've got Megan.
Okay,
hello.
Perfect.
Hi, how are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad, thank you. Not too bad. Just enjoying a bit of sunshine.
Is it nice in the UK at the moment? You're in the UK, right?
Yeah, I'm in the south, so I'm in the New Forest at the moment, and it's it's been kind of threatening rain all day, but it's actually been quite nice. It's been not too bad.
Right.
How about you, where you are? How's everything going?
Well, I'm in Mozambique at the moment, and the weather's a bit mixed, shall we say. It's usually really nice this time of year. This is usually like a really good weather-wise time of year, but it's been very rainy recently. And when it rains here, it pours.
I can imagine.
But I mean, it's good for the crops and stuff, so not complaining. The bush is enjoying it, so can't complain much.
That's the main thing.
While we do this live, could you keep an eye on the comments section of the live? Because I can't really see it because of the way that it's set up in Mozambique. I'm having to bring our social media manager, and then she's hosting it in England, so I'm on a WhatsApp call basically. So
it's all the technical issues of lockdown. I mean, it's amazing what everyone's been able to do to put on such amazing live broadcasts and everything, but it's, and you're able to do it from Mozambique, so it's an amazing feat. But of course, I'll keep an eye on those questions, so make sure you put them in the comments, everyone, and we'll get to them.
Okay, cool. And also, if I drop out, then the live won't stop. So Hannah will just redial me back in, and she'll do some stand-up comedy in the meantime.
Always good.
Okay, so let's get started. For our followers, do you want to just introduce yourself and what you do?
Yes, absolutely. So my name is Megan Mccubbin, and I'm a zoologist and wildlife TV presenter. I've just recently come off the back of my first ever BBC Springwatch, which was an amazing experience. Absolutely loved it. And we were, of course, all at home in lockdown, so all the presenters were showcasing the wildlife that they had on their own back doorstep. But prior to that, I've been presenting now for about three or 4 years, since 2017. And a lot of the topics that I like to cover are things about the illegal wildlife trade, pollution, activism, environmental issues like that. So that's kind of what I do in a nutshell. I love wildlife photography. Anything about the natural world and the wild world is just, fantastic.
Nice. Okay. And then just quickly for your followers that might not know who Love the Oceans is. So I'm the founder of an organisation called Love the Oceans, and we are a marine conservation non-profit. Our mission is to establish a marine protected area in this region being Jangabo in Mozambique. And we're doing that through a bottom-up approach. So we do a lot of different research, and we do community outreach work as well, with a very holistic approach. So we work in lots of different areas. But obviously with COVID, that's heavily affected our research abilities at the moment. Mozambique is in a state of emergency, which means that you can't do anything that's not essential business, basically. So unfortunately, our research has had to stop for the time being. So in light of that, we still want to be useful and create content and build networks and all the rest of it. And so we started this live Q&A series to bring on people like yourself, Megan, experts in the area, that we can chat through different conservation aspects and the audience-specific questions and things like that. So if any of you guys have to jump off this live before the end of it, it will be available on our YouTube, Love the Oceans YouTube afterwards, so you can catch it there as well. Okay, cool. So we got inundated with questions for you.
That's lovely.
Yeah. So if it's all right with you, should we just dive straight into them?
Yeah, go for it. I'll do my best.
Perfect. Okay, so first question's just the pretty basic one. How did you get into what you do now?
Well, I'm really fortunate to have a stepdad who is a zoologist and one of my actual heroes. So I grew up with Chris Packham. I met him when I was 2 years old, and he showed me everything about the wild world. I'd go around to film shoots. I spent a lot of time growing up around watching him in front of the camera and watching what happened behind the scenes, and traveling around with him as he would work, and he would take me to as many shoots and as many places as he could. So I got to experience the world at quite a young age. I was really fortunate enough to have been taken around the world to travel and see lots of amazing things and connect with communities that I never knew existed, see wildlife that I thought only existed in picture books, and connect with it that way. So for me, that's where that fundamental love of biology and wildlife came from. That you know, looking at a skull that you find on a beach, asking who could this belong to, looking at the evidence, looking at its dentition, looking at its eye sockets, figuring out what's what and who's who. And my bedroom quickly became, well, I think the Barbies were hidden far under the bed, and I had warthog skulls and porcupine quills and squirrel tails, and you know, my birthday parties were moth traps and dissections and all these kind of things. So for me, it's just been part and parcel of growing up, and I've just, yeah, it's hard. Once you get the bug for it, you just can't stop.
Yeah, a lifelong love.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's,
so I was going. Sorry, what was that?
No, go for it. I was just whispering on.
No worries, it's all good. So I was going through your social medias and like bios and stuff, like doing a little bit of research before this live Q&A, and I saw that you'd done some work on a BBC Three documentary looking at the bear bile farming trade. So I want to know a bit more about that, and what, like, how that was, because it seemed like it was really an emotional experience seeing all these bears in captivity. So yeah, can you tell me about that?
Yeah, so I spent about 3 months living in China, a couple of hours south of Chengdu, with the most incredible organisation called Animals Asia. And their remit is to rescue bears that are trapped in bear bile farming conditions. And bear bile farming is a traditional Chinese practice, which essentially you go out and you kind of, whether they're caught in the wild or whether they're bred in captivity, depending on country to country, it's quite different, the practice. But it's typically Asiatic black bears, Tibetan browns, occasionally sun bears as well, that are captured. And you know, these bears have got lifespans of up to 30 years, and they can spend all that time in a cage, sometimes so small that they're unable to turn around. And what happens is they are, the catheters inserted into their stomach, into their gallbladder, and they are drained of their bile, which is a digestive fluid, and it has anti-inflammatory properties that unfortunately do work. If you put it on your knee, it does help. However, there are better synthetic plant alternatives to those kind of issues, and it's also used as an aphrodisiac and lots of other kind of traditional Chinese concoctions that you can put it in. There's wine, there's toothpaste, it's in quite a lot of different products, and the bears go through a lot of cruelty. So when I was in China working with them, my job was to help rehabilitate these animals. So I went out there as a behavioural specialist volunteer, and I was looking at a group of bears in particular and working out how we could make that environment better for them so that they could live peacefully in the sanctuary, because there's no way that these animals could have been returned to the wild after years of psychological and physical trauma. So I never went to a farm when I was volunteering there. It was something that I had no idea. I've seen pictures and I was, taught about it, and the horrors were disturbing, really, really disturbing. The infections, the behavioural abnormalities that these bears go through, they are stressed and bored, and it's just unimaginable. So I got back to the UK, and of course it's still in my head, and when you experience something like that, it's hard to, you don't just forget about it, it stays with you forever, I think. And I got the opportunity to talk to somebody who was working on a BBC Three documentary series that wanted to investigate how accessible the illegal wildlife trade is, or wildlife trade is, to tourists. So I pitched the idea of going out to Vietnam to look at bear farms and see, as a tourist, posing as a tourist, could I go and find these farms? And I could very easily, unfortunately. So yeah, it was an emotional thing for me to see. I mean, you just walk into basically people's garages and they've got these bears lined up. People have them in their kitchens, they have them in their living rooms, and it's an expensive thing to keep a bear. You wouldn't keep it unless you could milk bile for it. So in Vietnam, the laws were slightly different than in China. In China, there's different legalities going on, but in Vietnam, it's illegal to farm bears for bile, but you were legally allowed to keep them. But because of the expense of keeping a bear, there's not much point in having these big bears that take up a lot of space. I mean, the cages are small for the bear, but they're large animals. So to have one in your kitchen next to your dining room table is quite a lot of space to give up. So yeah, we went out to investigate that, expose the trade a little bit, and to raise awareness, because it's something that people don't always realise is still continuing.
Yeah, definitely. Have you done a lot of work in like the illegal wildlife trade and that kind of area then?
Yeah, it's something I've always been passionate about. It's always something I've been fascinated in, particularly our psychology and our relationship to wildlife and how we connect with it and how we use it effectively. Of course, a lot of us think of it as a resource to take in. So I've always been fascinated by kind of our relationship with that and how we use these species. It's something I'd like to do a lot more of. Obviously, the bears is one of my main projects that I've done in that area. I've also gone out to places like Malta and Cyprus, where they shoot or trap songbirds and different birds that are migrating through. And that's a very different experience. Quite a amazing thing. Hopefully, in the UK, we love feeding our birds. Our bird feeders are stocked up. We're one of the countries in Europe that loves to do it more than any. But when these birds fly back down south and they stop over in Malta or Cyprus, unfortunately they get shot in their millions out of the air, or trapped, lured down and trapped. And so we were kind of scurrying around in the dark of night, finding these traps and filming it and trying to get the legislation out there, getting the police or the kind of the protection out there to come and remove the traps and to raise awareness for it that way. So yeah, I mean, very different experience to the bears, but it was still something that, yeah, those kind of experiences, they're with you for life, and it's an amazing thing to go and put yourself in that position to see it.
Yeah, it must be very difficult as a photographer, as a filmmaker as well, presenter, having to see that and not be able to, because I know that, like, so we do work with the shark fin trade. A lot of sharks are caught here for the shark fin trade, which is, for the people that are listening that might not know what that is, it's basically a massive trade where sharks are harvested for their fins. It's a pretty brutal practice, and typically the sharks' bodies are thrown overboard, but where we are, generally the shark bodies are landed as well, and different parts of their bodies utilised. But basically the fins are the reason that the sharks are caught, and then they're shipped off. And like the biggest market for it is I think it's in Hong Kong at the moment. And it's used in shark fin soup. The fins used in shark fin soup, which is actually in chicken broth, with just part of the fin in, but it's used to show athletes. And we do a lot of work with that, and I know that as a researcher, so our job is to obviously collect the data, and we can't get involved in like stopping the fishing going on or anything like that, because our work depends upon having a good relationship with the fishermen. If we break that relationship, if we start trying to interfere immediately with that specific individual, then the fisherman will basically no longer will be killing the sharks, but we won't have any idea how many have been killed or what species or anything like that, or maturity. And we're using the data eventually to stop the shark fin trade in this area, but until we can get enough data to get the legislation changed, then we've got to kind of stand back and just collect the data. So I know that, like, I find it very upsetting, obviously, seeing these animals killed and stuff. So it must be crazy as a TV presenter and wildlife presenter to not be able to get involved and stop that happening right there and then. Do you ever have to kind of like step back and be like, whoa?
Yeah, the amount of times I kind of fantasized about having you know, what they call, I'm really bad with it, like big pliers to break open the bears' cages, or you know, we in Cyprus we were able to remove traps, which was quite satisfying. But it's really hard because you know, you fall in love with these animals, and as I said, like, you know, growing up around them, seeing on the bird feeders or whatever, you know, you feel an affinity to them, and then to see them in that light is really, really tricky. But it, as you say, you have to keep up those relationships and those conversations, because often, you know, particularly you must find in Mozambique and areas like that where there aren't many other opportunities, and you have to go out and find a way to sustain your family. Or it's not necessarily the fault, it's about stopping the demand for those products and providing alternative situations so that families can be supported and can find other livelihoods. I think it's a really important discussion that, you know, should be had more of. It's not a case of, you know, well, that country over there is doing that worse than we are, so therefore it's not our problem. It's, you know, that's, you know, a really toxic way of thinking. It's, you've got to break down these boundaries, break down these walls, have these conversations and support each other with opportunities, but ultimately educate to reduce the demand for those kind of wildlife products that are threatening endangered species across the globe.
Yeah, I think that's also at like both levels as well. It's the demand and also the supply. Like, guys here are catching the sharks, and it's not because they have a thing against sharks or want to like kill these individuals. It's because they don't have an option. They're being paid to do it, so it's just means to an end. So like part of our work is alternative livelihoods and introducing different sustainable ways of living and getting more money and increasing financial security and food security in the area, because it's such a poverty-stricken area that we work in. So basically the fishermen are just doing it because it is a means to an end. And as soon as you can provide education, as you said, around that subject and pair that with a financially feasible way for people to live a more sustainable life, then it immediately becomes a much more viable option.
Yeah, absolutely. It's such an important conversation, I think, that needs to be had and isn't had often enough, about those kind of alternative ways to support communities that rely on shark finning or catching birds or whatever the, you know, the practice is. But it's something that, you know, needs to be discussed more, definitely. Yeah, definitely. And you've recently, formed Wildlife Rebellion, which I'm guessing has links to what we've just been talking about. So do you want to talk a little bit about what Wildlife Rebellion is? Yeah, absolutely. So of course, recently, you know, if we're looking at the news or we're looking, you know, at our news feeds, our social media, it is the climate debate, which is top of environmental agenda. And as it should be, it's of course the big issue that, you know, we're all facing and we all need to work out a way of tackling. One thing that we wanted to bring forward into the limelight was biodiversity loss. And we wanted to talk about habitat destruction and fragmentation as well, in parallel to the climate crisis, because they both go hand in hand. But we wanted to bring more attention to what we're losing as well, because with climate, it's always something that I think if you're a climate scientist and you know about, you know, you're an environmentalist, you can understand the science behind it and what's happening and why it's happening. But it's quite difficult. It's almost a bit more abstract. You know, you feel like, oh, this summer's a bit hotter than last summer, or there's a bit more rain here and there. But with biodiversity loss, and you were saying, you know, less hedgehogs, or there's something that you can physically see. It's a little bit more kind of tangible. It's a way of getting people to really connect through biodiversity into climate, and vice versa as well. So we wanted to create this new platform that was going to be all inclusive. So with organisations like Extinction Rebellion, which I'm a big part of, a big advocate of. But of course, people are nervous to join Extinction Rebellion because of the way they go about with their protests and obviously risking their liberty, getting arrested for the climate. Yeah. So, and understandably so, I've never been arrested for it. I go to all the protests and I support them. And there's different ways of supporting organisations like that. But I can understand why people are nervous. So we wanted to produce something that was family friendly. It's like family friendly activism. So you can come along and there is nothing illegal that will happen. There's no risk of you getting arrested. But you are stepping into becoming more active in your community to do something for biodiversity. So it's kind of, you know, and if you build up your confidence and you want to move on and do Extinction Rebellion, that's fantastic. But we're going to stick and do family friendly activism and try and get more awareness around biodiversity loss, because we know that we're losing species at a rate much faster than we ever have before. It's a huge trajectory. Since 1970, we know that we've lost 60% of vertebrates, which is massive. It's massive. And we know that we are losing this battle. We see the trajectories. It's going down. It's not good at all. But we do have the tools to prevent it from going down much further. It's just that we need to implement them, and in order to do that we need to act. And it's not, you know, enough to see these statistics and think, oh, that's really awful, that's really sad, I don't know what to do. We have to now think, okay, we're at a critical point in time. We as individuals need to take a stand up and do something. And whether that's coming along to a wildlife rebellion thing, which is going to be lots of fun. We haven't officially launched yet. It kind of lockdown, we're literally about to launch the day of lockdown, so that put a spanner in the works. So whether it's with us or activism, it's about getting people to stand up and do something for the environment.
Oh, nice. Yeah, so it's kind of like action points for families to get involved and yeah, help with conservation.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, what does rebellion mean to you? I mean, rebellion means something different to everyone. Whether, you know, to my little brother, he might think it's rebellious going and cutting a hedgehog highway in his fence, or, you know, and then to others it's sitting on a street and getting arrested. You know, rebellion has a different meaning to different people, and we want to kind of explore that word rebellion, and kind of push kind of being active in your environment, but doing it in a way that is all inclusive and really highlighting the loss that we're seeing.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. Okay, and then what's your favourite project that you've ever worked on? It can be like media related, research related. What's your favourite project that you've ever worked on?
It's a really difficult question because they're very different. And I love them, you know, all the projects that I've been on, I've loved in very, very different ways. You know, I love the illegal wildlife trade stuff. That's where kind of my heart really goes to, because I feel like I've been, you know, having seen the bears in the farms and the birds trapped on the lime sticks, it's where my heart is. So for me, as traumatic as they are, they're where I feel like, well, they're what I'd like to do more of. But, you know, I love the science of it as well. I love going out and working in different science field stations, and I've been doing that since I was at college, volunteering as much as I possibly could, taking part in, you know, wildlife hospitals, getting hands-on experience working in animal husbandry, or whether you know, I've worked with sharks quite a bit. I've gone out to the biological field station a couple of times and worked out there, looking at various different research projects. One thing, you know, shark personality project, that was huge. I loved that, the fact that sharks have different personalities and actually choose, kind of juvenile lemon sharks will choose who to swim next to based on their personality traits and all this kind of amazing stuff. So it's a really difficult question. I'm not sure I have an answer to it.
Yeah, but it sounds like you've done some incredible projects across the globe, so, you know, it's justifiable that you struggle to pick between them.
It's difficult, really difficult.
Yeah. Okay, we got quite a few questions on like favourite different things. So what's your favourite country you've been to and why?
I spent a lot of time growing up in and around Africa, travelling around Africa, lots of different places. It's probably where I feel most at home, other than here in the UK. Obviously, I love the UK, and our native wildlife, you can't beat it. But for me, you know, Africa is like a dream. I absolutely love it. And my favourite place there would be Namibia, I'd say. You know, you've got the beach and the sand dunes, you've got these red mountains, and, you know, it's not very, you know, largely populated. And not many people go there yet, but it's a beautiful place for wildlife. And the environment just changes. You can drive for an hour and you're in mountain ranges, and then you're somewhere entirely different. And I fell in love with the country massively. All the wildlife they've got there, the hyenas and the leopards, the cheetahs, all the big megafauna that I'm you know, stereotypically definitely love. But it's one of my favorite places in the world, I think. I'd move there if I could.
Like, I went there in 2017 for the first time, and that you can totally see why they use it in movies as like Mars.
Yeah.
Because the landscape is just insanely, like, it's just crazy scenic. Like, you just look around and the dunes are gigantic and they go on for miles and miles and miles. You can see why it's called the Skeleton Coast. Like, it's literally incredible. Yeah, absolutely incredible country.
Yeah, it's as close to Mars as we're ever probably going to get. Of course, I've never been to Mozambique. I'd love to go. I'd love to do it.
Well,
I'm not inviting myself or anything. Just,
yeah. You're always welcome.
Thank you. I'd love to.
Okay, and what is your favourite British bird?
Tricky. Again, very tricky ones. You know, I think for me, I'd have to say, well, actually, I'm going to say white storks, because I was really excited with them this year because it's the first time they've bred in the UK in over 600 years. The last time they bred here was in 1416. So I feel like now they can be classed as a British bird. Now they have bred successfully here. So that's a really exciting conservation project about rewilding. It's all down in the Knepp estate. And I just found that whole project amazing and fascinating. And I got really into folklore about different species. And I was reading up on these white storks, and of course they bring in babies. The depth of the folklore there is just fascinating about how, of course, the storks are around during the springtime, which is when a lot of people would be getting married back in medieval times, and then they'd disappear, but they'd arrive back 9 months later. So they'd arrive back when all the babies were being born. So this is this whole kind of, and I love all this stuff. I'm really geeky about folklore and myths and things when it comes to wildlife. So yeah, and because it's such a great conservation story this year, I'm going to say, I mean, it probably change tomorrow, but I'd say for today, white storks.
Yeah, well, I mean, like, that's got an incredible backstory, so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, great animals.
Your favourite or most standout moment with wildlife as a child?
You know, I was really lucky to travel to some amazing places and see some, you know, what you typically describe as the big sexy stuff, and which has been amazing. But I'd say, for me, the things that really stand out when I look back at it are stuff that's happened right here. You know, whether I was looking at an elephant hawk moth on my finger, the beautiful elephant hawk moths, that kind of olive green and pink coloration that you'd catch in your moth trap. And that's something really exciting to do when you can do something in your garden. You put it out and then you find it the next day and you get to identify it. It's that connection with nature. You know, it's just outside your bedroom window, flying around at night, and it's just really exciting. So it's things like that, I think, that for me, exploring my garden, looking at the butterflies and thinking that I used to think that the fairies turned into butterflies. So I used to imagine that, and it's those kind of things, how we connect with it on our own patch, that for me stands out. I had, you know, jam on my nose to attract wasps, and wasps would come and lick my nose off, lick the jam, not my nose off, but lick the jam off my nose and stuff like that. But it's those little gems, I think, that really stand out. So whilst, you know, I've loved it and I've been able to travel to some amazing places, it's what's on the doorstep really that gets me, I think.
Yeah, pretty cool stuff. Okay, we're going on to a bit more of advice questions now. But someone said volunteering abroad on a marine conservation project is life-changing and very rewarding, but what is the best thing that you can do for wildlife locally?
Well, in your immediate space, there's lots of different things you can do. And if you have a garden, there's lots of things you can do to make that more wildlife friendly. That's something that's been really popular throughout lockdown, has been making a wildlife pond. Ponds are really important. Freshwater systems are underrated and overlooked often. But putting a pond in your back garden, you'll attract a whole host of different wildlife. You're just getting a washing up bowl, sinking it into the ground. It's a great thing to do with kids, a great education tool. You'll get lots of different wildlife, and yeah, that's a really good fun thing to do. Putting hedgehog highways in, because of course with our gardens we fence them all off, which is essentially like habitat fragmentation. When you put boxes in things, then you're stopping the natural migration of different species to get to its food source, or it's, you know, to see one another, to be able to mate. So putting those holes in the bottom of your fences is really good. Feeding the birds. I mean, there's lots of things you can do in your garden. But the one most impactful thing that I think you can do is just stand up and be counted. You know, if you don't like the way that something's going, whether that's politically, whether you're seeing a statistic which is, you know, you're not happy about, you're seeing a decline, stand up and do something about it, because we don't have all that much time. And you know, make your voice heard, because every single person has an impact. And whether you wake up each day and you think, today I'm going to do something differently, I won't buy that piece of clothing that potentially, you know, use tons of water, cotton, which is very water intensive to create, or you know, I won't eat meat today, or that's really positive. Do one thing different every day to help the environment, but also just use your voice, you know, whether that's sharing something on social media. It doesn't have to be big. You know, share something on social media, write to your MP, do something to stand up and be counted, because every single person has an impact, and you know, we need lots of hands on deck at this point in time.
Yeah, raising awareness, even if it's just sharing stuff online, can go a long way, especially like there's so much stuff online these days, and we have the world at our fingertips. So sharing, raising awareness that way is so important. Here we go. What practical measures can we take to improve the ocean environment for wildlife?
Well, lots of different things. Of course, the first thing that jumps to mind is the beach clean. You can go and do a 2-minute beach clean, which is, you know, really important. The plastic in our oceans is absolutely tremendous. We think that now every single beach on the planet, even the remote ones on the islands, far away from everything, every single beach on the planet has plastic in it. 100% of sea turtles have plastic in them. So we know that plastic is a huge, huge issue. And I think every day there's something like 8 million pieces of plastic that enter that environment in one day. 8 million pieces of plastic. I can't remember the last time I checked about the human population. I think we were up to like 7.6 billion or something. You know, if each of us took just one piece, pick one piece up, the problem would be solved. You know, we all just need to pick up one piece. Of course, not everyone's going to do that, so maybe pick up 2 or 3 pieces. But if you're out in, you know, whether you're walking in the streets, whether you're on the beach, just see things and pick it up, put it in your pocket. My pockets are, not at the moment because I've just cleaned them out, but they're normally full of plastic, full of rubbish that you can pick up to stop it entering the ocean environment as well. But also, you know, around the UK, I don't think we always appreciate what we have under our waters. We've got some amazing stuff, and it's really exciting. All the different shark species that are there. You know, we've got lots of different whales and dolphins coming in up north. We've got orcas in our waters, and you know, we've got amazing stuff down south. We've got all these amazing crabs. The intertidal zone, which is the area where the ocean comes up and goes back down again. That middle bit, which is semi submerged and then not submerged, is fascinating. And just going rock pooling, engage with it, understand it a little bit more. And you know, education's a really big thing. So if you have kids, take your kids out there, take them rock pooling, take them to pick up a crab, you know, get their noses in, get their, you know, eyes under the water to understand more about the ocean environment and try and reduce impact that way.
Yeah, and just following on from that, for people watching, we actually just finished we had a June campaign where we were challenging people to make sustainable changes at home, and we themed each week something different. So there was like a week of like reducing your carbon footprint and a week of reducing your plastic consumption. I can't remember the other ones, but they are on our Instagram. And we've got like blogs on each subject and like tips on swaps you can make and ways you can make those sustainable changes. So if you need some resources to make those changes, then feel free to click on our Instagram and go check them out. Go check them out after this live day. Stay tuned for the rest of the live. And I actually forgot to ask a question earlier, which was a last-minute submission, but I thought was a really interesting question. How do you stay motivated seeing all of like everything that you've seen? Obviously, being a scientist, you know a lot about like climate change and the state of the oceans, the state of terrestrial ecosystems as well, and the general climate as well. How do you stay motivated when you come across all of this kind of negativity?
Some days it's hard, you know. I think a good thing is to be honest about it. Sometimes it is hard. I think everyone's affected by it in certain ways, but it's about how you use that energy. When I see something that gets me really upset, you know, 8 million pieces of plastic into the ocean each day, shark fins, you know, being, you know, for sharks disappearing at an alarming rate because of the demand for finning, bears in biocages. I mean, I get really upset and angry, not blaming people, but angry at the situation that we're in, and I want to harness that energy. I don't want to just let it go, because if I let it go and turn a blind eye, then that's meaning that that's an acceptable thing. So to kind of have ignorance to it, I'd love that. I'd love not to know about it. I really would. I would sleep much easier at night. But for me, you know, there's things like that that aren't acceptable, and I won't just sit and let it happen. I'll use that energy and I'll harness it into something productive. So if I get angry at something, I'll, you know, write a worded letter to my MP, or I'll do something to try and make a difference that way. So it's about how you turn around and use that negative energy and turn it into something productive and positive that's going to benefit that environment.
That's a really good answer.
Good, I'm glad.
I think I'm inclined to say that like environmentalists have to be quite resilient, because a lot of the science, especially these days, is coming out and saying things aren't in a great way right now, and we're facing the biggest challenge we will ever face, well, maybe ever face, but we ever faced, is the climate crisis. It's the biggest challenge we've ever faced as a human race. And science is amazingly positive on that. So being able to, I guess, as you say, like use that as motivation to do something about it and take action and take responsibility.
Yeah, exactly. Taking responsibility, standing up and being counted, I think. Definitely.
Yeah. Another question about what we can do locally. So how can people help conserve, obviously this is from the UK, but how can people help conserve marine protected areas and zones in the UK?
Yeah, you know, there's lots of different things that you can do. I mean, around the UK, we've got, you know, a fair few. We've got about this, our marine protected areas in the UK is around the size of Wales. So, you know, there's lots to improve on. Don't get me wrong, there's lots more areas that would be great to be protected. But it's also, you know, about how well managed those areas are. So the Marine Conservation Society say that about only 1% of that area that is protected is actually well managed. Is that the fault of the people who are managing it? Not necessarily. They're not necessarily always managing it right, but it's also about funding. Do they have the funds to be able to manage it correctly? And at the moment, we're in a difficult situation where, whether it's our marine nature reserves or our national parks, they aren't getting the funding to be able to do that critical conservation work that is needed. So we need to kind of raise awareness of that and say what's important to us. You know, nature has been there for us throughout lockdown. We need it, you know, we need to be there for it. And so that, you know, if something, hopefully this never happens again. But, you know, so that we can constantly rely on it when, you know, I don't know, if we're just having a bad day, not talking about pandemics, but, you know, so it's a give and take relationship. We've got to be there for it. We've got to now protect it. And a way of doing that is to, you know, lobby our government and say, you know, our marine areas are beautiful and we love them and we need more of them. We need them to be patched up. It's really important that they are well connected, of course, because if you have little bobbles of things, then that is really, you know, those populations can really suffer because they are vulnerable to really local changes, whether that's, you know, climate or whether that is shipping or anything like that. So we need to have this linked up system of these marine protected areas. And that's something that you can write to your MP about and get in contact with your government. Start conversations with one another. Start talking about it that way, and get involved with legislation. In terms of marine protected areas, that's the biggest thing you can do to help protect them as a big thing.
Yeah, definitely. And so these are, okay, we're moving on to some career questions now. So two are quite closely linked. Someone's asked, what's the best way to go about getting a job in conservation? And then another person's asked, what's the best way to get your foot in the door after graduating?
Always volunteer. You know, that's the first thing that I started doing. I started volunteering, well, when I was really young. I think certainly when I was doing my A-levels and throughout university in the summer breaks, I'd volunteer. You know, and after graduation, I would volunteer places. I still do. But that's, you know, a really good way of doing it because you get practical experience in whatever field that you're interested in, and there's lots of different places you can volunteer at, whether that's wildlife hospitals or scientific research stations or well, wherever really, you know, veterinary school. Go out and volunteer, because you get to know the people, which is really useful, of course, when, you know, you do graduate and you're looking for a job, a full-time position. You know people in the industry that you can speak to and get advice from, but you also have that practical experience that is really important in this industry. So volunteer as much as you can and get out and start conversations. There's an amazing community of people on social media, particularly the filmmaking industry, but everything, you know, in terms of wildlife. There's lots of amazing people out there. So get connected, send messages, talk to one another. Don't be afraid to get in contact. Everyone's, you know, it's an amazing community of people that are really friendly and happy to, you know, answer questions, or if you need to go to for advice. So don't be afraid to reach out to those people, because they're always more than happy to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of the time people are a little bit, I don't know, timid about reaching out. But like I always say to because we have volunteers join us in country when travel allows. And I always say to our volunteers out here, like, what do you want to do? Where do you want to go? Like, because also one of the advantages of volunteering with an organisation and stuff is that organisation generally has connections with others, doing different research, similar research all over the world. So they can also introduce you to a lot of different people. So utilising those connections and having those conversations, and not being afraid just to message people, email them or drop them a message on Instagram. There's absolutely no harm in that. So yeah, just work up the courage.
Yeah, no, go for it. Dive right in. It's a really friendly, lovely community of amazing scientists and people that, you know, the more people on board, we're very much aware that the more people that are working within this sector, the better. We need everyone at this point in time. So just get involved, get stuck in, get volunteering, and just get talking.
Yeah, exactly. There are also like, well, pre-COVID and I assume post-COVID, there will be like networking events that you can go to as well. Often you kind of like, I've just happened upon them a lot of the time when people have like posted them on Instagram or whatever, or a friend said like, hey, this is happening, come with me. But often there's like pretty chilled like drinks events where you just go and you meet people in similar industries. Those can be really, really useful events to go to, because you've basically got a whole evening, and if you find even if you find one person that works in an industry that you're interested in, then you can just get everything out of their brain.
Yeah, it's really worth it. It's really useful. I found those really, really important, for sure. I still do. I love going to them, because you meet some amazing people and learn new stuff all the time. So yeah, it's great just to make those connections with people.
And then we have one more question of our normal questions before we go on to our quick fire round. How would you encourage young people to get involved in conservation?
Yeah, there is, you know, an amazing group of young people, young naturalists out there who are so passionate and so knowledgeable and so, you know, invested in environmental issues. Of course, there's never enough. More young people that needs to get connected to it, the better. And I think that comes down to access to nature. You know, a lot of us live in cities where there isn't that many green spaces that we can go and, you know, allow ourselves to be absorbed in. So it's about creating natural spaces that are easily accessible to all, young, old, diverse groups. You know, it's really important now, you know, that those areas are proactively encouraging young people to get involved, to get that initial connection. Because I said earlier, you know, the thing that got me into it was sticking jam on my nose for a wasp, or, you know, getting a moth on my finger after a moth trap. And those are things that I was doing when I was like 4 and 5 years old, and that has sparked a lifelong love for something, and it's sparking that curiosity in young people. So it's all about education as well. I've been really excited recently, of course, because there's been talk about introducing a natural history GCSE in the UK, which would be so exciting. I think honestly I'd go back and do it. I'd have to, because I'd really want to do a natural history GCSE. So that's something that's really exciting, and hopefully will increase access to nature, will increase people's curiosity of it. You know, because we're born with this fundamental love of nature, because it's where we come from. We're a big part of that. So it's about building on that and not thinking, oh, it's the unknown and therefore it's scary, the outdoors. You know, I had someone say to me earlier, oh, I can't sleep with the window open when it's hot because the insects might come in, thinking it's going to be some kind of Jumanji reenactment or something. So it's about like getting used to that unknown and knowing it, asking those questions again. It's not asking childish questions, it's asking childlike questions about why do birds sing in the morning, or you know, why does a butterfly fly like that, or it's asking those different things and get engaging and connecting with it like we should and we always have done, but it's connecting to that part of ourselves again and allowing our children to do the same too.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, cool. So we have some quick fire questions that we ask all of our interviewees, and they're just fun questions. So I'm going to whiz through them and then we'll wrap up the session. So you ready?
Let's do it.
Okay. Okay, favorite ocean creature?
Oh, shark, hands down. Yeah.
Favorite day of the week?
Favorite day of the week? Oh, Friday. No, Saturday. Depends on what's happening in the week. Saturday.
And what's happening the weekend?
Yeah, exactly.
Plastic free or eco free product you can't live without?
Oh, my reusable water bottle. Take it everywhere. Never leave without it.
Yeah. Favorite beach in the world?
Ooh, tricky. Back beach in Bimini, which is where the shark club is, definitely.
Nice. Last song you listened to?
The Great Escape by the Lithiums. Great song. Recommend it.
I'll check it out. Dolphins or sharks?
Sharks, you know. In fact, I have a prop because I had an idea that sharks might come up, so I brought something in a box, which is, you know, it goes to show. It's my this is my Megalodon Teeth, which is fossilized Megalodon Teeth. So I mean, I'm absolutely obsessed with sharks. It's a constant thing. So I thought I'd get my Megalodon. I get any excuse to get my Megalodon Teeth out, I get it out. So.
Where did you find that?
So I was actually gifted it from a fossil collector, but yeah, it's one of my most prized possessions in the world. It's just you know, the idea of like I'll get lots of people saying, well, you can have a look how serrated these edges are, just how big it is. I mean it's pretty much the size of my face, and it's just an incredible thing. Yeah, and you know, to think about those animals that once roamed our oceans is just amazing.
Yeah, one of my friends actually found one on a beach in South Africa, and he got it set in a necklace.
That's so cool. To find one would be amazing. Yeah, that's a whole other thing to actually find one.
Pardon?
There's a whole other thing to be able to find one is is an amazing thing. I'd love to go searching for Megalodon Teeth.
Yeah, they wash up randomly on shores around the world. So yeah, I'm very jealous. Favorite holiday?
Well, I don't really do holidays. They're always kind of wildlife. Well, I say they're not really working because I love them so much. But I'd have to say that would be somewhere in Africa, maybe Kenya or Namibia.
Nice. Okay. Yeah. Would you rather be able to speak every language in the world or be able to speak to animals?
Oh, speak to animals, definitely. When you have that moment and you catch an animal that's looking at you in the eye, I always think, you know, what are you thinking? Like, what do you think of me? What, are you stunned? Are you confused? Are you interested? Like, I'd just love to be able to get them. And how do different animals think, and how do they think about one another? It's not just how they think about us, but how does a fox feel about a hedgehog, and all of those kind of connections that we, you know, kind of take for granted. I'd love to figure that out.
Wildlife photography would be a hell of a lot easier as well. You could just say,
wouldn't it? Yeah, an inch to the left, please. That would be great. Yeah.
As a superpower, teleportation or breathing underwater?
Breathing underwater. I'd live underwater if I could, probably. It's amazing.
What book would you take with you onto a desert island?
So this one's really tricky. Again, there's so many. I know it's meant to be a quick fire round. I'm trying to. I would probably take Not As Nature Intended, which is an amazing book that is written about a man's experience exposing illegal wildlife trade. It's very, very powerful, and it's, you know, he goes out and exposes the fur farming industry and places like that. And it is, if you can get any book, Not As Nature Intended, it's incredible. Yeah.
Nice. I will put it on my list.
It's a good one.
And first thing you're going to do when things get back to normal?
Of course, seeing how lockdown goes, I'd love to do a bit more exploration of Scotland. So to go out and maybe go and try and see some of the orcas up there, or see, I don't know, go and see the golden eagles, or do kind of like a wildlife trip up in Scotland. That's kind of, it obviously depending on lockdown goes, and I know a lot of people are going to be kind of flooding to that area, so want to obviously keep things safe and keep things responsible. So yes, we'll see. We'll take it a day as it comes.
Yeah, definitely. Cool. Well, that's all the questions. Do you have any projects that are upcoming that you want to talk to the audience about, or anything like that?
Yeah, so there's lots of exciting things that are coming on. We haven't actually announced this officially yet, but I'm going to say it anyway because it's exciting. So I'm currently in the process of writing a book, which is really good. Hopefully, it'll be out by Christmas. So Chris and I are doing that together, about kind of putting nature back together again. So that's something that we're currently working on. So if we're a bit quiet online, that will be why. We will be finishing off that. So that's something we're doing at the moment, which we're very excited about.
Nice. Very exciting.
We'll do a proper big announcement about it soon anyway.
Pardon?
We'll do a big announcement about it soon, but yeah.
Awesome. And for people who are still on this live and listening, you can check out Megan's Instagram. Top left corner, you should be able to click on whose both profiles. So you can click on the Ocean Sun, you can click on Megan's. You'll be able to catch this live on our YouTube afterwards as well. And I think on our IGTV as well. Instagram's had some updates, so you can check out that too. And we're going to be running this Q&A series for a few months now, so check in next week to see our next guest. Thank you very much, Megan, for joining us.
Not at all. Thank you so much for having me. It's been great to talk about conservation and all things wild. It's all I talk about anyway, to be honest, so really it's been good.
It's been a pleasure chatting to you, so have a great evening.
Yes, you too. Thank you.